What's your name, city residence, and item number?
I'm Samantha Olney. I'm an unhoused resident in Worcester. I'm here to support item 10DD. I'm here today as a representative of the unhoused community and the director of HALO to advocate for the establishment of a sanctioned encampment with on-site services for unhoused individuals in our city. The current approach of conducting sweeps not only fails to address the root causes of homelessness, but it also causes irreparable damage and the harm to the very people it's supposed to be helping. It is evident that the current policy, including the handling of personal belongings and the involvement of law enforcement with a history of strained relations with the unhoused, is not achieving the intended outcomes. The city's current approach to homelessness is not only ineffective, but exacerbates the hardship faced by individuals experiencing homelessness. Their strategy of displacing people from one area only shifts the problem to another property owner, creating a perpetual cycle of despair. With inadequate rooms and shelters and lack of essential services, those forcibly displaced find themselves without a viable alternative. The destructive nature of these sweeps not only erases whatever semblance of stability individuals manage to create, but also thrusts them back to square one, perpetuating the cycle of homelessness and jail. This relentless rinse and repeat cycle fails to address the root causes of homelessness and provides no real solutions for those struggling. Moreover, when individuals are placed in alternative locations such as shelters or rooming houses, etc., they often encounter arbitrary and unrealistic rules that set them up for failure, hindering any potential progress. It is time for the city to acknowledge the futility of this approach and embrace more compassionate and effective solutions, such as the proposed sanctioned encampment, which aims to break this vicious cycle and offer a genuine path towards recovery and stability. Across the country, sanctioned encampments have presented a viable and humane alternative to sweeps. We propose a model that offers stability and a sense of safety and community to unhoused individuals. Our proposal includes the implementation of on-site jobs, creation of programs to collaborate with businesses and to provide employment opportunities, access to essential services such as bathrooms, showers, cooking facilities, and secure storage for residents. To address the multifaceted needs of the unhoused population, we plan to incorporate comprehensive services including security, legal aid, case management, medical, and mental health teams. Each department of the encampment should offer those on-site jobs in the form of internships or apprenticeships to empower residents and foster personal growth and professional growth. We firmly believe that residents should play a pivotal role in the encampment's success by adhering to established rules, completing daily tasks, and holding one another accountable. Individuals can contribute to creating a thriving community. Our goal is to provide an environment where residents can learn and grow and eventually transition to indoor living and become productive members of society. We also want to strive to heal relationships and connections with residents in the community and the unhoused individuals who live in the city as well. A community in Canada built a coffee shop and a print workshop to help the encampment community self-sustaining and give residents usable job skills and a sense of community. While the city asserts that tents are not fit for human habitation, we argue that the immediate and effective solutions are lacking. The proposed sanctioned encampment is a fast and feasible option that addresses the urgency of the situation and offers flexibility of living structures. Today it could be tents, but as time passes and the community flourishes, cabins, tiny houses, and other structures could be built to replace tents as they have in other communities around the country. Communities have responded favorably to sanctioned camps in other states, as the crime rate surrounding these encampments has decreased. In Colorado, it reports that encampment communities, in 1 year, crime had dropped and no arrests had been made within the encampment.
Can you wrap up your comments, please?
Yes. As someone who's personally experienced homelessness daily, I can attest to the challenges and uncertainties that come with living on the streets. Having to find a safe place to sleep every night, a dry place when it rains, access to shower, ability to wash and do laundry, being discriminated against when shopping or trying to use the bathroom, and interacting with people in general can be overwhelming. Some people do not have a year to wait for services, shelter, or housing. For some, being unhoused is a life or death situation, and we hope that you consider carefully this request, as it is our lives that are in your hands today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Favor. Samantha Onley, council requests city manager create a sanctioned area for unhoused individuals to camp safely, free from prejudice and prosecution.
Motion to file.
Motion is to file. We have a motion to file. Councilor King.
On item,
10 double D?
yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is, I believe, at least the second time this has come before us. As I see it, a request and a cry for help, a cry for additional resources, as a request to improve health care, accessibility for this particular population. The last time this was before us, I stood and I asked that this go to committee. We have committees, public health, we have housing, and things of that nature that can kind of delve into what's the research shows on providing this space. Mr. Chairman, to the administration, as the weather warms, over the course of our work with this population, what sorts of movement does the unhoused population have? From an eye test, it appears as though these folks end up, in different locations, perhaps near parks, in the woods, in the forest, or whatever the case might be. And I know that we have a history of tracking kind of the movements of the population. So, the chair to the administration, what is that? What has that kind of movement look like seasonally with our unsheltered folks? Through the chair.
Mr. Manager.
Through the chair to the council, it varies depending on the season, like you mentioned, and so I couldn't really explain or depict in terms of what that looks like. I'd be happy to bring back a report. Our outreach team in HHS probably knows a better understanding of what those movement looks like from the unhoused. I know often in the summer they spend a lot more times in the woods, and in the wintertime they're looking for spaces that probably will try to keep them warm. But I'd be happy to bring back a report that kind of delineates where those movements are within those spaces based on the outreach efforts that people know. Because oftentimes when they're providing the outreach, they're looking for the individuals to provide the case management. So that's when they're able to identify where they may be.
Okay. I'd like to see that report. I mean, I think we've had the report. I just can't recall off the top of my head. And again, I think this is a matter that needs to have discussion pertaining to the fact that it's a symptom of systemic lack of resources, a systemic lack of resources. And that's why this is continuing to come before us, Mr. Chairman. We're talking about mutual aid. We're talking about how do we fill that gap between the unsheltered population and the need for housing and the time lag. What exactly is the ability that we have currently outside of the beds available in our temporary shelter? And I think that ends in May, perhaps. So, A, when does that end? B, outside of that, what are we doing with this particular population? Again, and I understand quality of life, I understand we have private folks in the private sector agencies doing street outreach and things of that nature. But what is our kind of plan? And also with regards to funding that the governor has declared for shelters for this population, what steps are we taking to access that sort of funding? Is there a formal request? And what is the plan to use that money if in fact it's been requested through the chair?
Mr. Manager.
Through the chair to the councilor, currently right now, the shelter is scheduled to operate until the end of April 30th. There is, right now we're having discussions internally to extend that to the end of June. And so we've engaged in conversations with the partners there as well. The funding in the shelter, the funding that they're being supported is through the state funding shelter system. And so that was about, $1.7 million to operate that for the period of those months. So we've been engaged with the state to try to access those funds to be able to continue to expand this effort. The agencies in the city are looking to expand more permanent supportive housing units in the city. We've had discussions in different elements to try to expand those units. But as we know, right now, development, it's a little slower in terms of getting moving and making these units available. The Landlord Summit was an area that we tried to, the mayor, myself, made a call out to the landlords that were there and asking them to make units available specifically for the unhoused, and work with our Economic Development Office and CMHA to provide those units. So we put out the call and put out a charge for them to be able to do that as well. There's a lot of efforts happening in the city, but as we know, there's a lot more that we can do and leverage state resources to try to achieve that.
To the chair, to the administration, with respect to what I refer to as the movement of the population seasonally, I did ask for a report back on that, but I just want to clarify. Are you saying that the administration at this time doesn't have a clear picture of what that movement looks like? From the eye test, again, it seems as though it's a pattern that we're clear of. But I'm trying again just to ask you a second time, if you have a perspective on where the population moves. And the reason I ask is that there could be times we know that they're, as I said, in the locations that they often end up, and we're aware that they're going to probably be back there again. And we try to wrap around with services and that nature, but we know where they're going to end up. And I'm wondering if there's a strategy there. So through the chair to the administration again, if you could just clarify if you have an understanding of what that movement looks like in the population seasonally.
Mr. Manager?
To the chair, to the council, like I tried to articulate earlier, a lot of the times when we're seeing it seasonally, especially in the summers, we're seeing them go into the woods. So that's what the eye kind of, based on anecdotal information that we've received and some information from some of the outreach workers that we know of from some of the individuals in the unhoused community. The effort here is to try to provide outreach and provide services as much as we can, understanding and knowing that services are limited and resources are limited and agencies are at capacity. There is also an understanding that some of our housing units are also at capacity. There's also an understanding that we can't get enough permanent supportive housing on board as quickly as possible. Understanding all of that, we're working in many different fronts to try to activate different spaces as quickly as possible. That's why the request to extend the overflow shelter here at the RMV has been made to try to continue to expand more opportunities for individuals to have a place to lay their head at night. In the meantime, they're going to work to try to provide some housing options to identify areas that are opening up. And again, like I reiterated during the Landlord Summit, I put out the request, and the mayor as well, to the landlords, if you do have a unit, please let us know so that we can work with you to get individuals housed in the city. Because there are vouchers, there are opportunities where people are kind of lingering on the list, and we want to be able to open up those lists as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to request a report back on, because I think I know where this is going to end. And I want to state publicly that I do support this going to the appropriate committee for further discussion, along with a report I'm going to motion for providing immediate solutions to these sorts of issues, particularly the research on sanctioned sites, the pros, the cons, and things of that nature. I think we should have definitely have, as a legislative body in committee, further discussion about this. And at the very least, from that discussion, there may be additional things and additional measures that come out of hearings. That's what happens all the time in committee, Mr. Chairman. And that's where, as we've always said, the work really occurs. I'd like to make a motion that we send this particular petition to committee for further discussion, Mr. Chairman. I think that's the very least that we can do here as a body. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? No, we're all set. No, we're all done. No, I'm all, no.
Because I
No.
was listening to this meeting on
No.
my iPhone with other people.
No.
And people here, I was astonished by the
Okay.
propriety of this meeting. One of them even say, we're gonna be here for
Okay.
ever.
Okay,
It's like comments.
we're good.
It's a formal meeting, so please, we are listening.
I appreciate it, thank you. We're going to take the item, and we're going to, so we've dealt with this 2 or 3 times before. We've had discussions. We actually went to committee last year for a discussion. And the city manager set up, and myself, a number of different working groups to try to handle the homelessness issue in the city, which will continue to do that. So the first motion is to file. If that fails, the second motion is to send it to committee. So the first motion is to file. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor Haji?
No.
Councilor King?
No.
Councilor Merrill Carlson? Yes. Councilor Nguyen?
No.
Councilor Ojeda?
No.
Councilor Pasillo?
No.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes.
So, Mr. Mayor, the motion passes 65.
Okay. This brings us back to the beginning of the meeting again, and before doing that, I was asked to dealt with this. We've had discussions. We actually went to committee last year for a discussion. And the city manager set up, and myself, a number of different working groups to try to handle the homelessness issue in the city, which will continue to do that. So the first motion is to file. If that fails, the second motion is to send it to committee. So the first motion is to file. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor Haji?
No.
Councilor King?
No.
Councilor Merrill Carlson? Yes. Councilor Nguyen?
No.
Councilor Ojeda?
No.
Councilor Pasillo?
No.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes.
So, Mr. Mayor, the motion passes 65.
Okay. This brings us back to the beginning of the meeting again, and before doing that, I was asked to take one item out of order, 17.
Mr. Chairman, is it appropriate for reconsideration just so, for this or no, for that last vote?
No.
Okay.
17.
Also recognize that this chamber that we sit in is named for her due to her successes, and she mirrors a lot of the mentions of a lot of other people that were mentioned here tonight throughout Worcester's history, and I'm proud of the fact that Worcester celebrates this. And also, on a personal note, my greatest heroes are my mom and my wife, and hopefully my daughter is listening as well, because she fits that as well. So I think we all feel the same about the women in our lives. So thank you, Councilor Merrill Carlson, for putting this on the agenda.
Well, thank you. And I know on Thursday there's this portrait unveiling at Mechanics Hall, and so if people are interested. And Councilor Russell, not having heard, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Pasillo said I better say something good about my wife after what's going on that side of the room. And I'll say that I hope that she's changed the channel by now, and that she's moved on to some more interesting TV than this council meeting. But all kidding aside, none of us, myself especially, would not be here in the position I am today, not only as a councilor but in life, if it wasn't for my wife and for what she has done. And I've always wanted to say this on the council floor. I always hear Councilor King saying this, but I'm a girl dad too. And, and the fact that this city is in a position it is now, attracting the women and men, but people like my daughter who have come back to Worcester is such a great thing. And a lot of it's got to do with the women that lead this government and lead this city in business. And I think that Worcester is the kind of a place where young women and young men, but women especially, want to be. And I think it's a credit, a lot of that goes back to the women that are in place of leadership right now. It's in the signs of the times too, that the roles that women play, it's no longer a discussion. It's just, it's part of a given, and that's so wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Council Haji?
Yeah, thank you. It feels really important to also mention that while we're celebrating the history and achievements of women, I want to point to a few disparities connected to some of the topics that we talked today. Particularly Black and Latina women continue to be lagging behind their white counterparts in how much they get paid. So wage inequality particularly affects Black and Latina women. When it comes to Indigenous women, health, maternal health, violence, the statistics are horrific. Trans women continue to be continuously prone to violence, to discrimination, and live in fear. If you are a Black woman in America and you happen to be on the verge of homelessness or housing insecurity, statistics show that you have a wider chance of being evicted. In fact, since COVID hit, statistics did show that Black women got evicted at a much higher rate, Black mothers particularly, than their white counterparts. We're looking at COVID, the health disparities, maternal health, maternal outcomes. Those affect Black, Indigenous, poor women, trans women the most. So I just didn't want that racial and economic disparity to be out of the conversation, because it is what should be driving a lot of the conversations when we talk about homelessness, housing insecurity, economic security, reproductive rights, which are under attack, and a whole slew of issues, economic and social, that disparately affect Black, Indigenous, and women of color and poor women.